Hello, I'm Marjorie Fisher. I live in Kansas City. I teach on the eastern side of Kansas City, teaching middle school art. I am very passionate about creating a welcoming space for my students. I wrote my paper on Viktor Lowenfeld. He was a big promoter of free expression and the role of teacher as a guide. We're going to look at some of the teaching practices that evolved over his time as an art educator, primarily focusing on the concepts of his book, Creative and Mental Growth. Lowenfeld began his art career in Vienna. He was teaching at a Jewish school right around the time that Nazism was hitting its peak, and as a Jewish person, Lowenfeld eventually had to leave Europe for his own safety and go to the United States. During his time in Austria, however, he promoted creative freedom in his art classes. Lowenfeld wrote the book Creative and Mental Growth around 1947. This book covers a lot of territory. It primarily offers advice for art educators and how best to foster student growth. The thought mostly during this book was that child development stages and creative stages were melded together. Child development stages were already a concept at the time, but Lowenfeld merged the two thoughts and also contributed some advice for art educators as well. Lowenfeld advocated for freedom of creative expression, also advocating that it could lead to emotional, social, and psychological well-being. Some concepts of Lowenfeld that stood out to me as resonating still in present times is that while Lowenfeld believed in developmental stages as more kind of separate stages throughout a child's time in development through their creative education, now we think of those stages more as a timeline or like a fluid concept. It's more of a continuous flow. I see that resonating more in art standards so that child's creativity and development can be nurtured through those standards where states want art educators to continuously nurture creative habits in children. The Lowenfeld stages resonated with me when I was a sort of youthful art educator at the time in 2012. I had learned about them and just thought they were brilliant on how to be able to identify sort of what stage our children really were in. While through my research, I read quite a bit about the criticisms of Lowenfeld's work and sort of the modern thought that doesn't support it. Looking at those stages and some of those concepts really helped me in identifying students who could struggle academically, maybe whose cultural influence is shown through in their artwork, which Lowenfeld at the time was not a fan of, and maybe the students that had not been exposed to as much visual culture. Since I taught in a rural school district, there were many students who were not nurtured as much as they could be, and we were very poverty stricken, so these stages of development at the time helped. The biggest resources I had definitely were Lowenfeld's Creative and Mental Growth and several other articles I found regarding Lowenfeld.